This pretty dog is named Amber, and this is her roadmap to success. She's Dalmatian mix. We don't know what she's mixed of, but we know her mom was Dalmatian, so we know she was a liver Dalmatian at least. She's a great dog. She's got a great personality. My one concern is I think Guardian hasn't told me this, but I'm guessing that there's a male or somebody that talks to her in a very loud voice at times. Some people think the louder that they are when they're talking to a dog, the more the dog will listen to it. A lot of times dogs just get intimidated for that, especially if we're being rah, rah, rah. And after a while, it kind of, I don't want to say breaks their spirit, but it really breaks their trust in you. And then the more you do it, the less they want to be around you. And just there were a couple times, I wasn't yelling at her, but there were a couple of actions that I did that just gave me that indication. So if you do have anybody, if there's anyone in her life that's watching this that does kind of talk loudly or sternly like that, we want to maybe try to find different ways to do it. Dogs are not verbal creatures. They do not communicate verbally. Most humans say between 3,000 and 11,000 words a day. And the easiest thing we can do is communicate through body language and movement, which I covered a lot of during the session. The Guardian can actually fill in any friends or visitors on what those things are. One of the things that we went over were escalating consequences. So to disagree with the dog, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a hissing sound like a cat. I have 10 hisses. At level 1 hiss like tss, level 10 like tss. So you need to match the intensity of the dog. That's a warning. I do that before the dog does the wrong thing. And I only hiss once per incident. Second thing I do is I abruptly stand up. To a dog, standing up is your arming business. It's your command position. Your authority is directional. It goes whatever direction your belly button is facing. So when you stand up, pivot whenever the dog moves around until the dog is stationary. As soon as it's stationary, take 2 steps backwards. Boom, boom. And then wait a second, then you can go back to doing what you're doing. That's your second consequence. And that's after the dog has broken the rule. The third thing we do is we march at the dog. When you march at a dog, this is confrontational orientation facing. Sideways is approachable. So when you march at a dog, when the dog turns sideways or greater, it's its way of saying, I'm not challenging you anymore, or I understand, I get the picture. So the third way to disagree with the dog is march at the dog until it turns sideways. The only time I don't stop when it turns sideways is if it's in a designated no dog zone. This is a kitchen area, and one of the rules I suggest maybe is making a line right here, an invisible line. So if we march towards the dog, as soon as the dog got on this side of this line, I would stop marching. And then I would take 1 step back, keep my good example. Keep my hips pointed at the dog, and I take a left foot, right foot, pause. Or right foot, left, it doesn't matter, but just 2 steps at a time. And as soon as the dog starts coming forward, I'd hiss and rush forward. As soon as it got on this side of the line, I stop. This is how we establish an invisible line. And a boundary, and establishing boundaries and teaching the dog how to respect them can go a long ways towards helping the dog develop self-control and respect you as an authority figure. The fourth consequence is what I call a leash timeout. I'm not going to go through that in detail, but if you want a better a synopsis or explanation of these escalating consequences, you can go to doggoneproblems.com and search for, click on the dog training tips page. On the left side of the page, there's a search box. You can type in escalating consequences. There'll be a video where it goes into great detail of how to use these. We also want to start petting with a purpose. So one of the things I noticed is she did a lot of this. She was nudging her guardian or jumping up on her guardian, and her guardian was petting her. Anything our dog is doing when we pet them is what we're reinforcing. I use this motion to put the dog in a sit, and then I say the word sit and nothing else. Now when I was doing this, let's see if she'll do it again. Sit. She's putting her paw up on me. This is a dominance move, putting the paw up. So as soon as the paw comes off the floor, I stop petting. Now a lot of people wait until the paw hits here. What I do is, as soon as the paw gets this point off the floor, that's when I stop petting. Do it way early. The timing is really important. But if every time the dog starts to paw or pick its paw up and you stop petting it, what you're saying is, if you want me to pet you, keep 4 on the floor. As soon as you try pawing at me and tell me what to do, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to yell at you, but the thing that you want stops. So maybe you should actually just kick back and relax and enjoy it while it's there. So especially if the dog nudges us and tells us what to do, if we pet it, then we're telling the dog that it has dominion over us or is responsible for us, and that can cause stress in a lot of dogs. So instead, what I do is the dog nudges me, sit, sit. I like to pet under the chin, the nose is up, that's a proud dog orientation. I'm saying just the command word, not sit, or not what a smart dog, or what good girl, or any of that stuff. We're going to use just the command word because dogs learn through association. After a while, what we're doing is basically saying the dog needs to pay for its attention. It pays through obedience. That's the currency. What's going to happen is the dog's going to start coming in front of, sitting in front of people saying, look, I'm sitting to prepay for some attention. Can you scratch me behind this ear? And we call this manding or learning to mand. It is a great thing for a dog to learn, and especially when we have little ones. Instead of knocking them over, I sit in front of the little ones and they pet me, or I get a reward. Let me see. If you want to pet the dog, still tell the dog to sit and pet it. The more we reward and engage the dog in what we call desired behaviors, the more dog is able to go into those positions when we give them a command, and more that they will do that as a way of saying, I want attention from you. This is actually what we call becoming operant. When a dog understands that it can influence a human by its actions. And what we're doing is the same thing that teachers do. Kid does a good job, they get a gold star on the board, or your mom's get a chocolate cake, or whatever it is. We want to reward those things that we want so the dog or the child recreates them. I also like the guardian to practice passive training. So every time the dog comes and sits next to her, pet her and say sit. Every time she lays down next to her, pet her and say down. Every time she comes to her, pet her and say come. Anything she does in an unusual way, we can make a command word. Keep on getting frogs in my throat. Now, since we have little ones that come by and she has knocked them over a lot, how the dog interacts with the guardian is how the dog thinks it should interact with everybody. So one of the things, one of the things that I do is get in a habit of not walking around the dog, walk through the dog. The dog needs to learn in this choreography, my job as a dog is to always defer to humans and move out of the humans' way, not to bump into the humans or push through them. She is a very jumpy up dog, and the guardian has gotten a habit of shoving her down. Dogs only do that when they're playing or mounting, and so the message that we're trying to send is not the message the dog's getting. Better thing to do is hiss before, recognize. Dog's gonna come over, it's gonna jump up, hiss when the dog's 2 feet away. Dog continues, then stand up. Continues, then march at the dog. Continues, then put it on a leash and give that leash time out. Do that consistently, after a while, the dog's like, I don't want a leash time out. I don't want her hissing, I don't want her standing up, so I'm just gonna come and sit in front of her, and then whenever I do that, she pets me. All right, so because we have little ones, one of the things we can do for the little ones to get them involved is, this is something that I just got interviewed on the radio this morning I was talking about, is get a little jar or a glass with the kids' names on it, maybe go to an art fair or whatever and have them design it themselves. And then we hold those glasses, or put those glasses somewhere, and every time the child pets the dog with a purpose, does passive training, does anything with the dog that we like, we take an M&M and go put it in that child's glass. And then if the child grabs the dog by the tail, we go, oh, I have to take an M&M away. Would you like to do something to earn, the dog's, and they just tell the dog to sit, and they pet it and say sit, and then we put the M&M back so we don't actually take them away. Little kids get upset with that. And at the end of the day, all the kids sit down at the dinner table, they dump their jar of M&Ms and they count them up. Whoever got the most M&Ms might get to take, some special time with the dog or a special dessert or some sort of reward. You create competition. Dogs learn through repetition, consistency, and good timing. And so if we have the kids that are helping us with this because they want those M&Ms, your dog is going to learn a lot faster, and it's going to learn to respect the humans, because the only way that they're going to interact with me is if I do something, one of these desired behaviors. We're kind of setting this up where one thing sets the next thing up, which sets the next thing up. The more that we pet with a purpose, the easier it is for the dog to sit. The more we walk through the dog and make the dog learn to defer around the human, the guardian, the more the dog gets in the habit of doing that. Once we've established that a little bit, then we have the kids come over, and the kids do the same hand motion. Dog just gets in autopilot and does it anyways, and then starts seeing the kids as an authority figure and someone to listen to. And this way they won't knock them over so much. They'll enjoy their company, and both of them enjoy each other's company. And like I said, it really works very effectively. Let me see. We went over a leadership exercise. I didn't film that one. The exercise we did was one of my rules, the door exercise. Some of the rules we talked about is no furniture for 30 days or as long as the problem's going on. Having to sit before we go in or out of a door. One that we forgot to talk about was, to be within 7 feet of anyone who's eating is very disrespectful in the dog world. So when the guardian is eating, the dog needs to be at least 7 feet away. If not, we're going to use those escalating consequences to practice. Now what happens? We're eating dinner, we're hungry, we're thinking about eating dinner, and the dog is being a nuisance. We're trying to train the dog how to behave in the act. Horrible time to do that. What I would do instead, get a piece of roast beef, microwave it, set your table like you're going to eat, and just put it down on your plate. You're not actually going to eat. You're not hungry. You're not thinking about it. You're recreating a scenario where you can help teach the dog, when I'm eating here, you're not allowed to cross the line over there. And because you're not actually eating, your timing and your attention to your dog is much greater. And then once they've practiced this enough, then when you do an actual meal, the dog already knows how you want it to behave. You could do this for any activity that your dog has a bad behavior or an unwanted behavior. Identify what the dog is trying to accomplish. In this case, it's pretty clear. The dog wants some of your food. Well, it's not going to get your food. So we're going to use this to practice teaching it to respect boundaries. When I do this for the door, I talk to this in the door exercise a little bit. We break down the ritual or whatever the exercise into small individual steps. Help the dog practice one step at a time over and over till it masters that one step. Then only then do we go to the next step. And the next step, just like we teach addition, 1 grade, then subtraction, then multiplication, then division. Dog has to learn one step before we go to the next one. And so anytime your dog has a behavior you don't want, if you break it down into small steps and help it practice, recreate the scenario. Don't do it in the moment. Recreate it so you can play with the elements and lower down the intensity, turn down the volume, increase the distance, whatever you need to do to help it not be so intense to the dog. And then and help the dog practice it. Eventually the dog will do the behavior you want because you've taught the dog how to behave. Now, because he counter surfs, we went through my MacGyver counter surfing ritual. So if you forget how to do that, make sure you let me know. But basically, we're going to kind of use a method to create a negative reinforcer anytime he jumps up on the counters. And it works pretty well. I think it's going to work really well for him. The Guardian, because he does counter surf and destroy some things, keeps him in a kennel. Now, she has him in the kennel a little bit longer than I would like, but he seemed to have a really good positive association with the kennel, which tells me she did a good job of training him to be kennel trained. Usually, you don't want to have a dog in a kennel for longer than 5 hours. It can increase their level of stress. But he didn't have any hesitancy. We did a little exercise where I went through there and I tossed treats in the kennel. As soon as he touched it with his mouth, I said the word kennel, or we could say crate or whatever the word is. We do that to get a positive association going on. We could do the same thing. I suggested setting up a dog bed underneath the counter and then basically just tossing a treat on there and come up with a unique command of maybe palace. So every time the dog goes over and touches it, we say palace. Well, if every time we go to a restaurant we found a $100 bill in the lobby, we're probably going to eat there a lot. So if every time the dog walks near over here and finds a treat, this is going to be a good place to hang out. Now, we had a dog bed, the Guardian did, I should say, and she destroyed it. I think a lot of that is, again, lack of control. Once we start incorporating these rules, boundaries, and structure, that hopefully won't be so much the case. But she is a high-energy dog, so we'd maybe look at increasing her exercise. And with dogs, I always say exercise is like interest in the bank. It compounds. If you're going to burn your dog's energy, the best time to do it is early in the morning. I have Dalmatians, and she's part Dalmatian. I have to do it in the morning, and then in about an hour, I'll go do some more. So fetch is a great way to do it. We went over how to teach her how to drop. So I practiced that with low value items and then you play fetch. And you got a nice long corridor here so you can actually use that to get the dog to burn some energy if it's a crappy day outside, it's too hot or too cold or sleety or whatever it is. I'd also like the Guardian to practice letting the dog out of the kennel in a very structured way. You can also go to Dog on Problems and click the dog training tips and search for kennel exercise. I have a bunch of videos where I go through this. The Guardian did really well with it. She responded pretty well. She tried to escape the first couple times, so remember to keep that distance close at first and then gradually start increasing the distance once she starts kind of getting on autopilot for it. Just for the leadership exercise and the kennel exercise, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to practice those every day. When we do we're going to use the same sort of approach for both of them. So if we're doing the leadership exercise, as soon as the dog lays down and gets to the point where they're laying down within about 5 to 10 seconds, then we're going to start adding time. After it lays down, we're going to wait 5 seconds. Then we're going to give it permission to say booty and give the dog permission to have the treat. Then we go to 10 seconds, 15. If we go to 15, 30, 45 seconds, then we go by 1 minute all the way to 15 minutes. But if you go from 10 seconds or from 15 seconds to 30, and the dog at 25 seconds keeps on getting up or having problems, back up and practice at 15 again a couple times. But we want to gradually, progressively get to the dog and help it practice laying down with a tasty treat right in the middle of the floor with nobody guarding it and developing that self-control. And it also will help the Guardian practice those escalating consequences, help the dog practice respecting them, listening to the Guardian, and developing self-control. Same sort of principle with the kennel exercise. Now, there's 2 kennel exercises. When she comes home from work is what we kind of recreated. We stopped, we blocked, we opened the door, but we blocked it with our legs, and we moved away very measured, waited for the dog to lay down before we gave her permission to come out with the word freedom. I'd also like the Guardian, and that's what I would like the Guardian to do every time she lets the dog out. However, we can also help the dog practice being in the kennel, which is just good practice with the door open. And a great way to do this is when you're home. Most of us never think about doing it when we're home. Well, I'm home, I don't need to do it. Well, then every time you put the dog in a kennel, that guarantees that the human's leaving and you're creating an association that can turn into a negative very easily. So what I would suggest is put the kennel right next to the TV, having the Guardian toss the treats in the kennel the same way, block, walk backwards in the same way we described, but help the dog practice being in the kennel for up to the 15-minute periods of time as well. And every once in a while, I would drop a treat on the dog bed or in the kennel when the dog's outside or in a different room. And don't point it out. When she comes in, I smell chicken liver. I like using the Tricky Trainer chicken liver, and they have a really strong aroma, which is why I like using them. She'll go let her nose find it, and then when she finds it, say the word palace for that, or kennel for that. So that way, every time I go in the kennel, it doesn't guarantee mean that I'm going to be restrained. It doesn't mean that my human's leaving me. It just means something good is going to happen, and we mark it with a command word within that 3-second window. Remember, anytime you want to, anything your dog is doing when you pet it is what you're rewarding. So if she jumps up on me and I pet her, I'm rewarding this. Sit. Sit. I always try to, that was a good job of, explanation of hissing before she broke the rule. But anytime I correct a dog, I always like to try to create positive. So when she got down, I petted her for sitting. Or if she's on the couch, you tell her to get down, pet her and say off, or whatever the word is. So that way we end it on a positive note. Let me see, what else? I really think it's going to be enforcing the rules and structure and being consistent that's really going to help her start to stop invading personal space. I mean, if she's like this with the Guardian, then the little kids are going to have no shot until they grow up. But she is a smart dog, and she responded really well. So the Guardian really understands the teaching concept, and I think this is going to go over really, really well. She's a good dog. She just needs a little bit of guidance. Last thing, we didn't have a chance to go over this, but for dogs, they spend 90% of their time in the wild looking for food. Eating is the most primarily important activity that they participate in. If we leave food in the bowl all the time, then it's no big deal. It's always available. And I have a lot of dogs that actually have an eating disorder because of this. And dogs that don't eat very well, a lot of Guardians are like, I want to leave food in there all the time. Well, when I lived in Santa Barbara, at one point I lived right across the street from the ocean. For like 2 months, I went to the beach every single day. After 2 months, I saw it when I came, when I left, I opened the window, it's right there. I took it for granted because it was too accessible to me. Same thing with food. If the food is in the bowl all the time, then I have no impetus to eat. But if I walk by and get some water, it's empty. I walk by to chase the ball, it's empty. I walk by to use the bathroom, it's empty. I walk by to get petted, it's empty. And then I walk by, oh, there's food in there? Wow, this is one of those 3 minutes a day when there's food in the bowl? I'm going to stop everything. Now this is very important to me. And by adding a little bit of structure to this, we can help the dog respect us a little bit more. Dogs eat in the order of their rank. So if you have multiple dogs living together, the human should eat first. Then I feed the dogs based on who's calmest next. We only have one dog here. So I want the Guardian to put food in the bowl, guard it the same way we did for the leadership exercise. And then as soon as the dog sits down, then the Guardian would take some chips or crackers and eat something in 5 or more bites. If you don't want to eat, you're not hungry, just grab one chip or one little carrot and eat it in 5 tiny bites. You can't fake it, can't be a smoothie or coffee, they don't understand those. But if she watches you eat, then you give her permission. And then when the dog takes the first bite, I say grub, chow, feast, whatever the word is that you want to command, make the command word. After about 2 months of saying grub the first time it takes that first bite, after a while you say grub, and they understand that means that's my release word. That's why I use booty as my release word for the treat, for the leadership exercise, which is again something you can search on Dog Got Problems to find videos for that. I didn't ask the Guardian this, but a lot of people don't eat breakfast, or they eat breakfast on the road or when they get to work. The dog looks at this like, wow, my human doesn't even have eating privileges. How could they ever have authority over me? This is, like I said, a very primarily important activity. So if we just add a little bit of structure to this, it really helps us have a lot more, the dog respect us a lot more. Now, if the dog walks up to the bowl and sniffs it and walks away, I pick up the bowl, I dump all the empty food out of it, and I put the empty bowl down. It's important to put the empty bowl back down. That way the dog sees it as a consequence. And I don't tell the dog, I don't encourage to eat. I give it the command word. If it walks away, I pick it up and dump it. If it goes and takes a bite and then walks away, dump it. Anytime it moves more than 3 feet away, I dump it. For dogs that eat really slow, if they're still eating after 3 to 5 minutes, I pick it up and dump it then as well. That'll get them to eat it faster. This helps you have dominion over the food. You're going to feed your dog every day anyways. Why not just add a little bit of structure to it, like petting with a purpose, and have the dog respect you every time it happens. She's like almost asleep, but she keeps her head up, which always cracks me up when dogs do. All right. Come here. Now I can't remember your name, but I'm going to remember it here in a second. Amber. That's right. Amber can come over here. We want to have see your pretty face facing the camera when we wrap this up. Well, over here. How about this? Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.